This is Travis Wayne Goodsell, and I wanted to talk about the brainwashing that's occurring in our nation, the mind manipulation, the mind games that are being played upon the people. And yes, as I'll make the title, it has to do with a Mormon, Stanley Smith Stevens. He was a psychiatrist during the World War II era. He came up with some famous power thing, but he's also involved with the creation of mind manipulation, cultural control, and you can see it in play with Donald Trump. And here's how it works. And yes, Democrats also, so don't have a fit if you're a Republican. Everybody's doing it. Everybody in power is doing it. Our nation allowed a pseudoscience to take over and dominate and control the destiny of this nation. And this is how it's done. We all know Trump lies. Trump himself admits that he lies. He calls it hyperbole in his Art of the Deal. But it's a lie, and that's what he does. He throws out tons of lies, and he does that specifically to find out what he can get away with and rile up the people with also. When he makes false accusations in his lies, he'll lock her up. That's a false accusation. There's no evidence that Hillary was actually involved, but yet those of you who are Republicans still follow Trump's mantra that Hillary needs to be locked up, and others of the Democrat Party. That's the brainwashing that's overcome you. And when Trump makes these false accusations, the victims or the targets of the accusations they experience a certain reaction, and it's intended to cause these different reactions on the one perpetrating the false accusations, or from the person causing the false accusations. They're doing this on purpose to cause the specific result. And the one result is that they want their opposition silenced. Now, Trump has done this very effectively against Democrats. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they said, oh no, we don't want to play in the mud with Trump. And so we just, we don't want to play his game. And so Trump continues to attack verbally, making false accusations, riling up his base, and the Democrats therefore have been silent. That's a non-disclosure agreement type situation, and Trump is very good at those. He does them a lot, having everybody sign non-disclosure agreements. And what it means is that you must be silent and not report my criminal behavior. And it's a threat, is what it is. The accusations are specifically designed to threaten people and silence people from retaliating, rebelling, resisting, etc. However, when his opposition does push back, this then justifies Trump in punishing, blaming the opposition. And so that's exactly what Trump said when the House was taken over by Democrats. Trump says, well, now I have somebody to blame. And that's exactly the type of psychological manipulation that occurs. They allow what people think is a position of power, but in the end, it's still the false accuser who maintains the power and the control over the others, his opposition. And so, if Democrats don't fight back, his already preconceived false accusations therefore justify him in establishing punishment towards his opposition. If they don't remain silent and submissive and loyal, if they continue to speak softly to their own parties, to their own groups, they will be punished by the false accuser, in this case Trump, as I'm using as an example. And if they do fight back, like Maxine Waters, when children were being locked in cages, she was down there at the border stopping the busloads of children being taken elsewhere in our nation. And you saw Trump twist that around to blame Maxine Waters as being a violent and aggressive person who needs to be silenced. The former Attorney General under Obama, he says when they go low, we kick them. And he said other things too, but of course Republicans take his words out of context so that they can justify making the punishment against the opposition. This is the mind game that is played, and I hope Republicans understand that, because that's why Democrats make the false accusations against you. When Republicans are in control, you'll notice the left-wing media, the left-wing press, will always complain about anything and everything that the Republicans do, when all they're doing is doing exactly what their platform says that they're going to do. And so obviously Democrats accuse Republicans of not doing the Democrat way. And of course they're not going to do the Democrat way, but Democrats don't care. They want their way and none other. And so, yeah, both parties are involved in this. And this is where Stanley Smith Stevens comes in, is because he established a system by which you categorize people. You name them in a specific category. And our nation has developed two categories in the political sphere, Republicans and Democrats. So there's only two-party belief systems that are in play, and both are at odds with each other. And so when Democrats are in control, Republicans bash them. When Republicans are in control, Democrats bash them. And it's all based upon their own thinking system. That's a dichotomous categorization that Stanley Smith Stevens created. He also had a non-dichotomous categorization of naming, in which it's a spectrum. And you see that in the political sphere as well. With Democrats and Republicans, you have left, right, and middle, moderate, I guess they call it. That's a spectrum categorization within the dichotomous categorizations. And it's specifically designed to create a scenario that is predictable. So if you're a Democrat, it's predicted that you will behave a certain way when certain events take place. So when there's a shooting, Democrats want to ban guns. They want to have mental health treatment for the shooter. Those types of things. And Republicans, they want more security. They want to give everybody guns. And so it's predictable behavior of situations when an event occurs, conditions. And that's because of the categorization that has taken place. In psychiatry, that's the same process that Stanley Smith-Stevens developed. You don't get lab tests by psychiatry. In psychiatry, the psychiatrist and therapist, they just sit you down and talk to you. That's it. They just talk to you. And depending on the severity of your condition that they've categorized you in, determines the amount of time that they need to talk with you. If they are able to provide you with drugs to control your behavior, and that's what the drugs are. They don't cure what they call mental illness. There is no such thing as a mental illness. There's mental damage, there's a mental disorder, a mental disease such as cancer, but there is no such thing as a mental illness. That's a false definition that they've thrown into the mix to fool people with. And so they categorize people according to the outward symptoms, not the cause. You know, when you go to the doctor, you're supposed to have the doctor do blood work on you, do x-rays, other scientific research into what your problem is. So though it may appear on the outward surface that you may just have a cold, the doctor can do blood work and say, oh, wait a minute, no, there's something else going on, and we've identified the cause in your bloodstream. And so we're giving you this particular drug to eliminate that causal factor in your bloodstream. So sort of like if you get drunk, you've got alcohol in your blood, and you need to wash that out so that you don't have the problem. So it's like that. But in psychiatry, there's nothing scientific about any of it. It's all based on Stanley Smith-Stevens' psychological mind games of categorizing people and convincing the people that they are who they say they are. So when the psychiatrist says, oh yeah, you're mentally ill, you're paranoid schizophrenic, or you're bipolar, or you're some other thing, it's not based on lab results. It's based on just them sitting down and talking with you. That's it. You can't accurately diagnose a person by just talking to them. You can tell there's something wrong, and there have been instances where people who are in a speaking assignment or acting or any kind of performance, they start talking, like news also has had this situation where a person starts jumbling their speech. Well, they're having a stroke is what most of those conditions are. And medical doctors are able to identify that it was a stroke because of the x-rays or blood work or whatever that they do to find the cause. And it's not something that people can say, oh, well, they're just mentally ill. They can't put words together. They can't communicate properly. And so, yeah, psychiatry is now moving into the area of blaming people who don't believe in a specific category that's dominant for the society. Here in Utah, for example, psychiatrists categorize people as mentally ill when they're not of the Republican mindset, because Utah is dominantly Republican. And so if you don't think like Republicans, you therefore have a behavioral problem because you speak out against Republicans and what Republicans do. Therefore, you then are mentally ill. And that's the trap that they set for people. That's all Stanley Smith Stevens who designed this, to control behavior, control society, and control how we will behave under certain conditions. And you can see under Trump is purposely antagonizing for the purpose of causing a riot. He is getting so extreme, he is pushing people to fight back. And if they don't, then he'll just keep enforcing his extreme policies that will take away, that has taken away all our rights and freedoms. And we become slaves to the system. We've already had it through the economy, but now Trump is doing it through government. And I've already seen that here in Utah, because Utah is dominantly Republican. And that's the platform of Trump, is the Republican platform. And so Utah has already dominated the behavioral control of society. And so in Utah, we don't have many blacks. We've got just barely above 1%, according to the statistical report. And so, yes, there's lots of blacks who get arrested in Utah. We've even got cop killings of blacks who are unarmed. But the majority are those who are either Hispanic, Latino, Mexican, who people think, well, maybe they're illegal, and so we'll just ship them back. That's been popular here in Utah, and they keep them in jail without a trial. The nation has 95% people who do not go to trial. In Utah, it's 98%. And that's how extreme it is here. We don't get justice here in Utah, all because of the behavioral control, mind manipulation over society, over our thoughts, over our actions. And it's specifically set up to trap us. If we don't remain silent and submissive, which means we end up dying because we can't survive. We're suppressed to the point where we don't have enough money to take care of our families. And so there's family separation here in Utah. And we end up on the streets. And they don't care about the poor. They're a burden on the tax system, as they call it, because that's the way they have things run. And it's attempted murder is what it is in their attempts to control society and their actions and behavior. It is pure evil in its design. And Trump is manipulating that to egg on and promote and speed up the process of the destruction of our nation. But the majority of our nation is so under control of the previous administrations having been brainwashed to such an extreme that the majority of us are silenced. Social media has allowed people to speak out, but for the most part, we in this nation are suppressed in our voice, and those who protest, you see them instantly getting arrested for protesting. You're not allowed to protest under this system, and that's a very great danger that we're in. That's what I'm trying to warn people of, is that all of us have been brainwashed, brain manipulated, brain controlled, and it's targeting everybody on both the Democrat and the Republican side, and those in the religious side too. This isn't exclusive to government and exclusive to psychiatry. Religion pulls the same exact stunt. They control your behavior. They control your actions. Yes, criminal behavior is wrong. But when you get to things that aren't really criminal, and it's more of a behavioral control, sort of like dietary restrictions, clothing restrictions, those types of things, forced Sabbath observance, even that is attempt to control behavior and action of the people. And today's is Sunday, for example. I mean, are you going to church because you fear a wrathful and vengeful God who's going to strike you down if you don't go to church? Do you go to church because you fear your peers in your neighborhood will criticize you and shun you from society if you don't go to church? Do you not go to church because of your rebelliousness, that you think that you don't want to be controlled, so therefore you're not going to church and you don't care about the consequences of being punished? Or do you not go to church because you recognize the truth about the origins of Sunday worship, that it came from a Constantine who changed the date to the first day of the week on Sunday, whereas the Jews, who had it previously on Saturday, but the Jews got it from the Babylonians. The Babylonians were the originators of a Sabbath day, a day of rest. Why? Because the number 7 in Babylon was a bad luck number, an unlucky number. And so 7 in the days of the week, the 7th day of the week, and they were the ones who had a 7-day week calendar first. And so that last day of the week was a day of rest for the Babylonians. And thus we see that when the Jews were taken captive into Babylon, they assimilated the Babylonian culture and were in essence brainwashed by the Babylonians in this type of process. And there are many other things that Babylon influenced the Jews with. The language, for example, Paleo-Hebrew. That's the research I've been doing for decades. The original Paleo-Hebrew was not Semitic. It was Semitic after the Jews went into Babylon, and when they came back, they merged the Paleo-Hebrew script with the Babylonian phonetics. And that's why Hebrew, post-captivity Hebrew, is Semitic. But originally it was not. It's instead similar to Paleo-Greek. The majority of the symbols derive from the same source, Phoenician, as it's also called. Paleo-Hebrew took the exact same symbols of the Phoenician alphabet. So Phoenician and Paleo-Hebrew are in essence one and the same. Paleo-Greek added a few more letters and took out the Lamed, as it's called in Babylonian Hebrew. And yeah, so as you can see, the names of the letters were different, though they didn't have names originally. It was a later development around 300 BC that naming letters of the alphabet occurred. Okay, so I hope you understand the seriousness of what I'm talking about, how each of us are being pressured to fall into a category of thought. Some people have tried to say it's like a box in our mind, and people try to say think outside the box. That's similar, but some of those people who tell you or teach you about that are trying to put you in a box outside of the box, and that you got to be careful of also. I recommend Plato's allegory of the cave. That perfectly illustrates the concept that I'm talking about. And so understand that when you're watching the media, when you're watching Trump speak, when you're sitting in church or watching conference for Mormons, that you pay close attention to what it is he's saying, and don't be fooled by the traditional interpretations that have crept in. In Mormonism, for example, Mormonism has altered the definitions of the altered definitions. And it sounds complicated, but the modern church, the current church, sees definitions of faith, repentance, differently than when Joseph Smith changed the definitions from Christian definitions. So Mormons also are getting brainwashed, and that plays a big part in Utah because the church controls the government, and the government is Republican, and it major danger here in Utah. And that's why I'm extremely critical of the church and trying to warn the members of the particular danger that we face here in Utah. But it's now a threat to the rest of the United States as a dominant Republican Party have taken over. And even though the House has taken it back to the Democrat power, Democrats likewise play this same mind game on us. So I'm concerned about Democrats who are talking about trying to make a bipartisan effort to work together. That concerns me, because now you don't have choices. You have one governing body over everybody, and that concerns me greatly. And if the Democrats have been threatened to such a severity that even though they dominate the House, they still cave to Trump's threats, we're in for major problems beyond what we've already seen. And so, yeah, that's the mind manipulation that is done on us. So don't fall for it. Don't fall for your own party. Don't fall for the accusations of the dominant party. Whether it's in government, economics, at your work, the same thing is done at work. in order to keep you suppressed at a low wage that is insufficient to care for your family. That's what they do to keep you at the job. They threaten you because, hey, they'll just fire you if you oppose them. And the government won't step in and help you. And in Utah, you can't get a lawyer who is in the minority opinion, or thinking outside the box opinion. And so there's huge dangers in our nation. And I hope I explained it so that you understand that everybody is at risk. Nobody is immune from this. When we see commercials, when we listen to people in religion, in government, at work, we're all in danger. So beware. And on the 23rd of November, I will provide solutions as to what we can do to protect ourselves and identify what's going on to us, and how to survive the apocalypse that's coming. So my website, www.travis-wayne-goodsell.com.